Greetings, friend, and welcome to the Between the Covers podcast, where we are working every day to remove the self-limiting beliefs that are preventing us from becoming the heroes of our own stories. I am Marcus Barr, and today, let's talk about money. One of the things that has been my hope for this podcast is that this is a safe place to talk about some of the more challenging and difficult conversations and topics that maybe a lot of people shy away from discussing. One of those topics, in fact, I heard during my premarital counseling that there are 3 topics that tend to be the breakers or determining factors in a marriage and whether it's going to survive. And those 3 topics are politics, religion, and finances. So let's talk about one of those. Let's talk about finances. Let's talk about money. In my own journey of becoming the hero of my own story, one of the lessons that took me the longest, I swear, to learn was how to be responsible with my own finances. I remember in college, being the gamer that I am, I would spend a lot of my free time when I'm just alone in my apartment playing my video games. And there was this one day that I found out that my PlayStation 2 was no longer working. And to me, that was unacceptable. So I drove to a Fred Meyer and bought a brand new PlayStation 2. And at this point, it was still like $150 to get one of those. I forget how much it actually cost me. Bearing in mind that I was working part-time in a drugstore. And for a while, I was even working 2 jobs while maintaining my full course load, living in an off-campus apartment by myself. I had no roommates. I had no one to split the bills with. I didn't make some of the best decisions financially during that season, during those years actually. And this was an example of one of those. Instead of going without, because I really wanted to continue playing my PlayStation 2 games, instead of just going without, I incurred more debt in order to allow myself the ability to play these games. For some full transparency, this was one of the stickier topics in my marriage really early on. Now, my partner Libby is a phenomenal bookkeeper. She can come up with a budget. She went to college herself and came out with very little debt. And then she marries me and she incurs my debt. It was a real struggle for her. It was really difficult early on in our marriage when we incurred, with my degree and with all of my credit card debt, we had to deal with a 5-figure debt. We were able to do it. It took us a while to bring down that debt. And while we're talking about this, it's not even just debt that's worth talking about when we're talking about money. For a lot of people, especially in this capitalist society that I live in, called the United States, money equals security. And yet, one of the questions that I will often bring up when Libby and I are having conversations about money, and especially when things are not going according to plan with trying to get our house paid off, is at what point do you have enough? What is the specific dollar amount that gives you the security that you hope for? In my experience, once you reach that dollar amount, it doesn't feel secure. Most people continue to chase after a moving goal line, and how much money actually provides you some kind of security. Where should we find our security from? Should it be money? Are we looking at how we can improve our status with others? Something else that comes with money. I do fully realize the potential double standard that I am expressing here when some people who are watching this on YouTube can see everything that's in the background behind me. I have a lot of little fun things on display. I have a shelf over my left shoulder that I keep changing out, and there's a new metal poster that's on there and talking about when do I have enough money, when am I secure enough, when do I need to be content with what I have. I understand that some people can hear this message and want to call me a hypocrite about it. I get that. I really do. At the same time, it took me a long time to acquire these things behind me. Some of these were gifts. With these metal posters, I would purchase one a month. And I specifically did that because I would receive a coupon code that gave me, a 30% discount on the next one if I purchased it within 30 days. And one of the things that has helped Libby and I, in particular, practice contentment and practice our financial freedom is we have a monthly allowance for each other. It is specifically allocated in our budget. There are certain weeks where I receive an allowance. There are certain weeks when Libby receives an allowance. And this is our fun money. That story that I shared when I was in college, that was an example of me being terribly irresponsible with money. At the same time, we have been in a position where financially we are living from paycheck to paycheck. And it's during those times, and this is something I've seen not just in my own life, but in the lives of others as well. It's when you don't have the money that you often want to spend it the most. I think some of this comes down to FOMO, or fear of missing out. We are so afraid that we are going to miss out on something, be it a deal or an experience or something else entirely, that we would rather go into debt in order to have things now rather than wait for when we are more financially secure in order to obtain what it is that we are hoping to obtain. When I think about those two options, the looking for instant gratification is very childlike. the prolonging of the gratification, the waiting for it, is much more grown up. And there are times where I act like a total child. And yet, when I did, those were the times when I was the most financially unstable, that the only way for me to get out of it was to pay off debts and interests that equated to well more than twice as much of what I actually spent. And that's something that can happen when the only thing that you can do is make the minimum payments on a credit card, which doesn't even cover the cost of the interest that you're incurring. Money is a tricky thing. Money is one of those things that we need oftentimes in order to survive. I am on a computer using software that I'm paying for, speaking into a microphone that was gifted to me, with a webcam that I purchased years ago in order to make this podcast work. There isn't any other way for me to really make this podcast. I have to spend money in order to make this work. There's the internet. There's my podcast hosting site. And yet, one of the things that Libby and I have done without for a long time is streaming services. We get most of our entertainment through YouTube. When we are told about this really awesome TV show that we would likely enjoy, like right now our friends John and Dan are telling us about The Good Place, or A Good Place. I forget whether it's A or the, if it's simply A Good Place or if it's the declarative good place. I've heard really good things about this TV series. Instead of trying to pay for a streaming subscription in order to stream and send money to wherever it's being hosted at, I tried something different. I found out that it's available through my library system. I can actually check out the DVDs. I think that's what we're going to do. I'm not spending any extra money. I get to try it out, see if I like it. And if it's something that I enjoy, then I'll save up in order to purchase the DVDs or Blu-rays myself. That's something that is very different from how I used to handle money. From what got me into the 5-figure debt that took us years to pay off. In fact, let me put this into perspective a little bit. I'm really putting myself out there when I say this. I had a bank account since I was a little kid. My parents tried to instill in me the values of saving. And I did put money aside and I saved. When I was a teenager, I was probably about 16, roughly, when I opened up a different account at a different bank. I might have even been 18. I don't remember now. I was somewhere between 16 and 18. And eventually, they offered a credit card. Yeah, I had a checkbook. I had a debit card. And they offered me a credit card. And I'm like, yeah, Sure, let's go ahead and do that in case I've got any of these big purchases that I can't afford with whatever I have, because back then I was still working only part-time. So between the ages of 16 or 18, I get this credit card. By the time I graduated with my bachelor's degree, where I incurred the most debt over the span of 2.5 years, I didn't go into debt going for my associate's degree. But I sure went into debt when I was living on my own. It took Libby and I about 8 to 10 years to pay off debts that I incurred over a 2.5 year period. That's not the most financially savvy thing I've ever done. And I'll admit that. In this area of my life, I had to do a lot of growing up. And by growing up, meaning I had to become content with what I had, not worry about missing out on anything, and develop a habit of delayed gratification while saving up for the things that I really wanted. Money is one of those really challenging topics because for most of us, we need a computer, we need a smartphone, we need the internet in order to just work and do our jobs. For a lot of us, we have utilities. Maybe we've got little extras like a streaming service like Amazon Prime, something else. We need money in order to make sure that we have electricity in our house, that we power our cars, that we have a roof over our head. Oh, that we have insurance for these things that take us from one place to another, and for the roof over our heads. Things get damaged. They need to be repaired. They need to be replaced. I know there are some people who do live off the grid. Most of us are not those individuals. Which puts us in a very interesting and sometimes difficult predicament. We need money in order to have and do a lot of the things that are a part of our daily life. Yet, there are many of us that put way too much value in a number in a bank account. And yes, this is also coming from a white middle-class man in the United States. And there are those who are not nearly as privileged as I am, who are living from paycheck to paycheck way more than I ever did. I want to acknowledge that experience. It may be harder for you to get what you need in order to survive. And if that is the case, I'm so sorry that that is what is happening to you. I am so sorry that there are people who are minorities who the system does not work for them because it was created by white middle-class men or even rich middle-class men. And so the system works for them and it works to the detriment of others. All that being said, what I want to challenge you on is Do you have a healthy relationship with money? Do you put too much value in a number that constantly changes? That's one of the things that I've had to learn over the years is money is not really a good indicator of status or of security. There are people that I know who live completely content and happy lives, even if they live below the poverty line. And you have individuals who are making millions of dollars a year and are so stressed because of the amount of debt that they are incurring because they're not living within their means. When I think about it, that's one of the key takeaways for me, is for me to have a healthy relationship with money, it has required me to be comfortable living within my means. And that has required me to say no to a great many things, a great many luxuries even. And I'm okay with that. I am okay with saying no on some things now, if that means that I am the one who is in control of my money, not that my money is in control over me. In fact, if you are one of those who is like me and can be very easily influenced by advertisements, one of the best decisions that I made was try and cut out as many advertisements out of my life as possible. And that's actually helped me become more aware of how I have been influenced by marketers and marketing and all of these people that are telling me to be whole and happy, I need this. Or I need to look like this, or I need to do this. Again, that is a moving goal line. At what point do you have enough? At what point have you got there? Have you reached the goal? Because you never will. As soon as you spend money on one thing, marketers are going to tell you the next big thing that you need to spend your money on. I hope that this glance at one of the most difficult topics has helped to open your eyes on what it can look like for you to become the hero of your own story, especially in how you are the one who can take control over not just your money, but your security and your value. It's a number that changes all the time. It's going to fluctuate. May as well put your value in something else. That's what I'm trying to walk here. And until next time, live strong for today. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. If you like what you're hearing and you're interested in working with me, there is a link to my website in the show notes and also a link just to schedule a free 50-minute one-on-one call with me. Let's get the conversation started. Also, please rate and review this podcast so more people are able to find it. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to talking with you again soon.